or 2005 in New Vrindavan for the first time. I believe Govinda Prabhu and Gauranga Prabhu had come. They were doing some seminars in New Vrindavan. And I remember dancing in Kirtan with him. And I found him to be an intensely likable and very dynamic, very fired up, as we say in ISKCON, devotee. And then I remember when I stayed at the Boston Temple, he was my roommate. And I remember him getting up in the mornings and doing seva for Radha Damodar, right? Radha
Gopi Vallabha.
Gopijana Vallabha. And yeah, so fortunately, very, very honored to be part of the Boston community. Yeah, as he explained, I am one of those fortunate recipients of Srila Prabhupada's mercy, which gave a meaning and direction to life. You know, I was also like a rudderless boat, just drifting in um, some mental universe of mine where I was thinking I am God. Trying to squeeze as much pleasure out of this material world as I possibly can in my ignorance. And then came Srila Prabhupada in the form of the boat of ISKCON, a temple in Columbus University campus. I got introduced to Krishna consciousness, and it was so blissful. And the journey has been one of meaning and joy and ever a deepening sense of knowledge and identity and self-realization and you know um, an exploration into philosophy, history, culture, religions through the medium of Srila Prabhupada's lens of philosophy he gave us. So that has been my introduction. And today I chose a topic from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book called Bhajana Rahasya, the secrets of the chanting of the holy name. So just do a little introductory prayer. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamai Tadati Swaha Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapatakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatanam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate तप्त कांचना गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद मुखम करोति वाचालं पंगुम लंगायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य ईश्वरम्. Okay, so again, please accept my warm welcome on this evening of Sunday at our ISKCON Boston Sunday Feast program. So the topic today I chose was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhajana Rahasya, in which he maps the journey of a sadhaka from Shraddha to Prema. He explains that the most important thing, the most important wealth, the most important treasure a devotee possesses is his Shraddha, is that faith. And that faith is what differentiates between a devotee and anybody else. And that faith is not an ordinary commodity. It is gained after lifetimes of bhakti unmukhi sukriti, devotional activities or activities which are pleasing to devotees or serving devotees over lifetimes. They accumulate. All's one's bhakti unmukhi sukriti, pious activities which give rise to bhakti, they accumulate over a course of several lifetimes to produce shraddha. That shraddha is not an ordinary commodity, and pure devotional shraddha. Shraddha shabde vishwas kurile sudhir nischay, Krishna bhakti karile sarva karma krita hoy. If I have done my Krishna bhakti in this human lifetime, everything else is done. Meaning that strong faith that sense gratification is available in other life forms also, strong faith that the purpose of existence is pure devotional service, which leads to pure devotional consciousness, which is the only solution of repeated birth and death. This firm faith that bhakti to Krishna is the foremost duty of human life, and that everything else should be centered on it, and it can revolve around it, but that pure devotional service forms the context of human life, human existence, of my existence, is a very, very rare commodity indeed. And that pure devotional shraddha then further brings one along to the path of pure devotional service. That is a very rare commodity indeed. And that person who has pure devotional shraddha, you can see his behavior, you can see his activities, his deliberations, and you can tell whether he has pure devotional faith or not. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also explains that when pure devotional shraddha is based upon the verdict of scriptures, or what Prabhupada says, or what Guru says, or what Vaishnavas say, or what is sin and piety, or what is good for me and not, when it is based on these considerations, it leads to Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And when that pure devotional Shraddha evolves, and it is evolved from a platform of greed, that greed can, of course, come at any point in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. But when that greed becomes the source of that Shraddha, that now I have to do these activities because I cannot stop, because I am in love with Krishna, because I cannot think of anything except Krishna, because Krishna is everything to me. That when it becomes greed, when the impetus for devotional activity is greed, when the impetus for hearing and chanting is greed, and also following in the footsteps of a Vrajvasi, like in Damodar Ashtakam, we are all following in the footsteps of Mother Yashoda. This meditation on Damodar is basically, you know, in the footsteps of Mother Yashoda. So when that Shraddha is based on greed, and that greed follows in the wake of a Vrajvasi, then it is called Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Both are sadhana bhaktis. One is Vaidhi, which is based on scripture. Another one is Raganuga, which is based on greed and following in the footsteps of a Brajbasi. That Brajbasi can be one's own guru as well. Okay. So that's that. So after Shraddha comes Sadhu Sangha. That Shraddha just often lead people to Sadhu Sangha in variety of ways. If you ask people how they came to Krishna consciousness, they have generally a very materially improbable story to tell. They go through this life changes and cycles. But what has actually happened is that their bhakti unmukhi sukriti over many lifetimes have led them to pure devotional shraddha. And then it was just a matter of contact with a pure devotee. It is important to meet a devotee of the Lord. Without meeting a pure devotee of the Lord, it is not possible to avail sadhu sangha. Sadhu sangha is meeting a devotee of the Lord, especially meeting a spiritual master, meeting a guru, and then receiving the holy name from him. Coming to the point of faith that yes, I have to now take the holy name from a guru, from a pure agent of devotion, and that is called sadhu sangha. And after that begins bhajana kriya. Bhajan means chanting of the holy name. Kriya means different activities of devotional service. One of the definitions of pure devotional service is Um, Sarvopadhirvinirmuktam tatparatvela nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. Engaging one's mind, body, and senses in the service of Rishikesh is called pure devotional service. Another definition which Rupa Goswami gave is anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma adi anavritam. That shraddha, that devotional service which is devoid of any other desire, um, jnana karma adi anavritam. It is not covered over by karma or jnana. And we'll talk about that. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma adi anavritam. Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam. It is pleasing to Krishna. How do we know it's pleasing to Krishna? It is pleasing to Guru and to Vaishnavas. When it's pleasing to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, that is Anukulena. Anushilanam. Anushilanam means to follow in the footsteps of the great devotees. Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktir Uttama. Such bhakti is called topmost, Uttam Bhakti. In Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada gives many examples of who is an Uttamadhikari. One time he says that one who is constantly chanting the holy name and his heart is free from the propensity to criticize others is an Uttamadhikari. Another time, Srila Prabhupada writes in Nectar of Instruction that one who is strictly chanting the holy name, following all the rules and regulations, and always thinking how to expand this Krishna consciousness movement, he also is an Uttamadhikari. And that person could even be 1 week old in bhakti. But if he has that faith, if his heart may not be completely clean, that is true. But as long as he's on the platform of pure devotional service, he's also called a pure devotee, an Uttamadhikari. Meaning what? Meaning that he's sincerely chanting the holy name, he's following all the rules and regulations of bhakti strictly, and he's always thinking of how to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. So like that. So we know the definition of pure devotional service. And bhajana kriya. Bhajana means to chant the holy name. Kriya means engaging one's body, mind, and senses in Krishna's service. And then comes side by side, as once one is doing bhajana kriya, there is an important obstacle called anarthas, or a state of devotional service called anartha nivratti. Okay. So it is important that when one practices devotional service, one is also very conscious of anarthas so that he can recognize them, introspect, contemplate, work on them, mold one's behavior and nature so much so that his anarthas are progressively getting nullified. Otherwise, anarthas can cover over on devotional service. So that's the subject matter for today's talk, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhajana Rahasya. He divided all the anarthas. What is an anartha? Artha means meaning or goal, artha, or something which is valuable. Anartha means which is not valuable, which has no meaning. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna tells, actually Narada, Brahma tells Narada in the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam that, O Narada, thing which has no relation to me, you should know that to be of my Maya. So that's an important idea. Anartha cannot be dovetailed in Krishna's service. It is something which is superfluous. It is something which I picked up, unnecessary baggage in my journey back home, back to Godhead. And I need to give it up. I need to shed that dead weight out of my consciousness. So anartha has no meaning. It is something which slows me down. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur defines and categorizes anartha into 4 different categories. The first category is called Tattva Vibhrama. Tattva Vibhrama means illusion. I am actually thinking something false to be real. I am mistaking a rope to be a snake. I am an illusion. And if, like in mathematics, if the first step in an equation is wrong, then everything what is going to proceed from that is going to be wrong. It's not going to be correct. So what is Tattva Vibhrama? He defines it into 4 subcategories. The anarthas are divided into 4 major categories. We'll go each one by one. And each category is then further subdivided into 4 subcategories. So Tattva Vibhrama is divided into 4 subcategories. Number 1, Swa Tattva Vibhrama. I identify myself as either this body or my mind. We know that we are not this body. Okay, that's understood. The body is temporary. It's a vehicle to be engaged in the service of Vishnu. But even devotees practicing for decades, they identify with their mind. They speak whatever their mind tells them to. They believe what their mind tells them to. Their actions are impelled by their mental ideas, which are contaminated by the modes of material nature, by pain and pleasure, attraction and aversion, by conditionings, by biases. So, what is true? What is not Vibhrama? The words of Guru are true. The holy name is true. And service to Krishna is true. Everything else is just a mental concoction, it's mental imagination. So one should be very careful not to fall into this trap of swatattva vibrama, thinking one's mind and the production of one's mind and one's thoughts to be real. They can be real. They can be if you're purified, if you are guided, if your thoughts are in synchrony, in harmony with Guru Sadhu Shastra. There is no sound. Is that right, Vanamali Pandit Prabhu? Did you lost me?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So that is an important idea that I'm not this mind. I'm not my attractions and aversions. I'm not pleasures and pain. I am not the circumstantial happenings which is happening to me. I am not a product of Donald Trump's political country, neither I am a product of economic recession or whatever it is. These are all circumstantial social situations. They're all temporary. I am beyond this. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. Swatattva Vibhrama. So I am a part and parcel of Krishna. I am of the nature of Brahman. I am Satchid Ananda. So if I am Satchid Ananda, I am of the nature of Brahman, then my life should reflect that. Okay. Um, yeah. Vanamali Prabhu, please let me know if the sound is not clear. Okay.
No, I think the Mataji's sound, she's not turned on. So she has to turn on the audio. Saikiran Prabhu, can you just contact, ask her to turn on her audio? She's only video is on, her audio is not. Okay. Sorry, Prabhu, please continue.
That's okay. So if I'm not feeling Satchidananda, if I'm not feeling Brahman, then I have to adjust my internal attitude. I have to really think about why is it that I'm identifying with my mind. One of the biggest relief I had when I started chanting Hare Krishna is that I could see two things. I could see the reality and I could see my mind. I could see that I was schizophrenic, that I was hearing voices. I was hearing things by my mind, which were not true. And I slowly and slowly began to distance myself from my mind. And I became more circumspect that my mind is not telling me the truth always. It's just like I'm hearing voices. I don't have to, schizophrenics have to ignore those voices and the images they see. So similarly, I learned that by chanting Hare Krishna, that I was able to separate those two things. And I have noticed that whenever I don't chant Hare Krishna attentively, I tend to identify with my mind. And that identification with mind and the physical body creates a lot of problems. And if that step is wrong, then it's all wrong from that point on. Once I have identified with my mind and my emotions and my body, then everything I'm going to do is going to be on the platform of Maya. It's not the platform of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada uses this word platform. He uses this word platform many, many times in Bhagavad Gita or in his writings. We have to come to the platform of Krishna consciousness. Yes? So Swatattva Vibhrama. Then there is Paratattva Vibhrama. Paratattva Vibhrama is what is the absolute truth? Sri Krishna, he's the absolute truth. The son of Mother Yashoda, he's the absolute truth. People think impersonal. Brahman is the absolute truth. Demigods are the absolute truth. Donald Trump is the absolute truth. These are not absolute truth. The absolute truth is Sri Krishna. we say we should not worship demigods, but if I'm worshiping sportsmen by watching sports and giving my time to them, if I'm watching movies and giving my time to celebrities, if I'm reading all the gossip, then basically I'm thinking that there is somebody who's more important than Krishna. I'm worshiping them. I'm worshiping them with my time, with my energy, with my intention, with my consciousness, with my thoughts. So one has to be careful. People worship politicians, even devotees. I see they go into endlessly into political debates and all of this, and sports and celebrity worship, and that's our culture. Our culture is not a one of demigod worship, but the sportsmen and celebrities and politicians and money have become the demigods. Okay, Lakshmi. So like that. So we have to understand Paratattva Vibhrama. The Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam. In Damodar Ashtakam, Satyavrat Muni, first thing he says, Nama, I pay my respectful obeisances to Ishvara, who's the supreme controller. And who's that supreme controller? He has a Satchidananda Rupam. He has a form, Rupam, and is that Rupam is Satchidananda. It's not made of material Rupam. जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम एवं यो वेति तत्वतः त्यक्त्वा देहम पुनर्जन्म नैति मामति अर्जुन. So one who understands this absolute nature of Krishna's pastimes and his transcendental attributes, he never has to take birth again. So para tattva vibhrama. Okay, then there are two more vibhramas or illusion. The third one is called sadhya sadhana vibhrama. What is sadhya? What is the goal? And sadhana? What is the goal of sadhana? Sometimes people may think that the goal of bhakti is getting a better material situation or heavenly planets or fame or name or position or controllership. But these are not the sadhya. The sadhya is pure devotional consciousness. Krishna, I am your eternal servant. My job is to please you. That is the sadhya. And sadhana is the limbs of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, which Rupa Goswami enunciates in Nectar of Devotion. So, having vibhrama about that, not practicing sadhana bhakti properly, ignoring the rules and regulations, neglecting or whimsically practicing devotional service, committing offenses to Vaishnavas, all of this is in the category of sadhya, sadhana, vibhrama. One should very carefully read the literature left by the Goswamis and Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada to really not fall into this vibhrama of what is the goal. And its goal should be very clear, one's intention should be very clear, one's motivation should be very clear. That's called sadhya sadhana vibhrama. And then the fourth is virodhi vishaya vibhrama. Virodhi means one which is opposed to. Vishaya means shelter. Um, one which is virodhi vishaya means Srila Prabhupada said, my problem is that my disciples are not afraid of Maya. Virodhi Vishaya. As a devotee goes on his devotional service, his initial enthusiasm slackens, and then he begins to make friendship with Maya little by little. Maybe a little this, maybe a little that, and then that little hole becomes a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, until he completely leaves the association of devotees. This is called Virodhi Vishaya Vibhrama. There's Maya all around. And yes, anything can be dovetailed in Krishna's service, but one should be careful about what one is exposed to, what one is hearing, reading, how's one's chanting is one's chanting improving, is the samskaras in the mind going away, is my lust and anger coming down, is my material attraction coming down? If not, then one should make adjustments. One should make adjustments in one's life to do it. So that's called Virodhi Vishaya Vibhrama. So the first anartha is called Tattva Vibhrama, which is Swatattva Vibhrama, identification with body, mind, emotions, one's psychology, one's conditionings, and to accept that as real. Accept that as real and to not understand that we are all schizophrenics. Okay. The second is Paratattva Vibhrama, not understanding the transcendental absolute nature of the supreme absolute truth, Krishna. Third is Virodhi Vishaya Vibhrama and Sadhya Sadhana Vibhrama. Okay. The second category of anarthas, which Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, is called Asat Trishna. Asat Trishna, desire for matter. And Asat Trishna is Asat, things which are not Sat, which are not eternity. Trishna, thirst for matter. Thirst for matter or material accomplishment and goals is called asat trishna. Asat trishna is divided into four categories. Thirst for heavenly comforts, heavenly apsaras, damsels, going to heaven. Muslims talk about this. They want to go to paradise where they're served by damsels, or Christians want to go to heaven. This desire for heaven is actually asat trishna. A devotee says, whether I go to heaven or hell, whether my existence is finished, whether I'm mistreated, ill treated, or whatever it is, I will only serve Vishnu. I don't care about heaven or hell. Heaven and hell shall pass. So, asat trishna, the first thing is desire for heaven. Second is desire for mystic powers, which is the goal of yoga. Anima, laghima, siddhis, powers. Third is desire for impersonal liberation, and fourth is so yoga, impersonal liberation, and then fruitive desires, opulence, or fruitive work, fruitive desires, opulence, material acquisition, like that. So these are four categories: fruitive desires, heavenly planets, yoga, siddhis, or impersonal liberation. Impersonal liberation, people want to become God, they want to be known as God, they want to be worshipped as God, they want to be known. They put a big beard, they put a little halo around their face, and they become God. They're all cheaters actually. So they're all cheaters. In the name of a big beard and flowery language, they are fooling people, and such cheaters are actually go to hell. They go to hell sometimes. When they're living, they go to hell because they fall down into gross sense gratification, and their bluff is exposed, and their beard is cut off, or they go to hell after their death because they're simply cheaters, simply nice mental speculatory jargon words, big things. Prabhupada said a humble sweeper, a humble person who sweeps the temple, or a humble cook for the Lord is much more advanced. He has a much higher destination than any of this bogus yogis and swamis and bhogis and all of this, people. They're all cheaters. So this is basically based on asat trishna. So that's asat trishna. We have learned tattva vibhrama, asat trishna. The third category is called aparad. Aparad means offenses to devotees. These are anarthas. Offenses can be further classified into four categories: offenses to the holy name, offenses to devotees, offenses to the form of the Lord, and offenses to any living entity. First of all, Krishna is Sambhavatva. He loves all living entities. He is the well-wishing father of all living entities. So we should not perform any activity which cause pain to anybody. Okay, we should deal very carefully with family members, with extended family members, with friends, with our co-workers, colleagues, staff members. Be very careful in dealings, so that we don't commit offenses to any living entity. And some living entities are going to be offended, that's okay, but as long as you are not doing anything to offend them, that's all right. Offenses to the holy name, we know all those offenses, they're already there. Offenses to the form of the Lord, that is also very clearly given. Now of course in Kali Yuga, Krishna is not going to stick us with each rule and regulation, but as long as we are respectful and we follow the standards and protocols which are established in our temples at home, worshipping the deity properly in good consciousness, then that's good enough. But the biggest thing is offenses to devotees, which is called the mad elephant offense or the Hathi Mata offense. Offenses to devotees, we have many examples in the scriptures. That one causes offense to devotees, he falls down. His consciousness becomes hellish. So my realization is that even when a slightest of a thought comes in your mind that I am right, other person is wrong, I'm better than others, what do they know? Know that this is Maya Shakti acting. Please don't act on them. In the general course of events, because of our conditional nature, we will commit some offenses. That is all right. That's water under the bridge. One should not take minor offenses from others, and one should excuse other offenses. So similarly, inadvertently committed offenses are forgiven. But if we become angry at a devotee, we blaspheme a devotee, we should then ask for his forgiveness, ask for apology, atone, repent, burn in the fire of repentance, and make a vow not to do the same mistake over and over again. One should not, out of one's ignorance, think that devotees are ordinary people. Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha. the scriptures describe the glories of sadhu sangha. Devotees are very dear to Krishna. Krishna is Bhakta Vatsal. Krishna does not tolerate whether it was Sobhari Muni committing an offense to Garuda, whether it was Durvasa committing an offense to Amrish, whether it was Rupa Goswami committing an offense to that lame person who was walking and he was smiling because he was in the spiritual world. But the lame person thought that Rupa Goswami is looking at me and smiling because of my handicap. He became offended, and Rupa Goswami's meditation on the transcendental Lord broke. We have examples of Ramchandra Puri, Ramchandra Khan. We have examples of Gopala Chapala. The scriptures are rife with examples of devotees who committed offenses to Vaishnavas and they fell from a very exalted platform. So, what is our platform? We are very meager, very meager spiritual credit we have in Kali Yuga. So, whatever that meager credit is, let's not destroy it by committing Vaishnava offenses. If there is a disagreement between Vaishnava, better to take a humble position. If you think that you are smart, you are right, they are all fools, then please know that this is coming from Maya energy. One should not be self-righteous. One should not be too boastful or proud of one's accomplishments or material wealth or material knowledge or material abilities. Okay, this is all material and it can be finished in one stroke. Krishna consciousness is different. One should be very respectful and deferential towards Vaishnavas, especially senior devotees. And according to Nectar of Instruction, we should deal with different Vaishnavas according to how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us in different in Nectar of Instruction. So that is Vaishnava offense. One should not commit Vaishnava offense. One should definitely not write anything in print media or post. It is simply blasphemy, and it is very very detrimental to the devotees, and it's very detrimental to our spiritual life. When one becomes an offender, then his food and air becomes offense. He lives on offense. He thrives on offense until he's completely doomed. And even then, he cannot realize it because he's covered by his offenses. But he will not attain Krishna Prema. He will not attain the goal of his chanting. Sometimes it may look like I'm committing offenses, but I'm okay. But believe it or not, they're not okay. They're not relishing Krishna consciousness. So that is the third category called aparad. Aparad to Vaishnavas, aparad to Jiva, aparad to the holy name, and aparad to the form of the Lord, deities or the holy places or scriptures like that. So that's the third category of offenses. And then the final category of offenses which Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about is called Hriday Daurbalya, or the weakness of the heart. And he defines weakness of heart. Number one is fault finding. This fault finding mentality is also called deceitfulness. Deceitfulness. Devotees may have their struggles, but I also have my struggle. One should know that if I have so many faults, if I have so many struggles, who am I to find fault? If there is something I want to communicate to a Vaishnava, I can respectfully tell him directly. Prabhu, I'm disappointed you said that or you did that, and Prabhu, can you please do it like this, or can things be done in this way, without going behind his back or without criticizing him or judging him, but in a loving way, in a very loving way, in a respectful way. If things are communicated, that should be the case. And one should always maintain a positive intent for devotees, even if they're struggling or they make mistakes or they may act in ways which are not aligned and sync with their spiritual consciousness. One should never become upset or angry with devotees. One should always maintain a loving disposition, loving mood of tolerance and forgiveness towards devotees. So fault finding or deceitfulness. The second is envy, envy towards other jivas. My religion is best, everybody else is bad. Animal slaughter, or this national consciousness, and God bless America, but Mexico can go to hell. Why? There is universal brotherhood. There should be universal peace, justice. Krishna is for everybody. He's the well-wishing father of every living entity. One should feel like that. One should feel compassion for those who are less fortunate. One should not be envious of other living entities. So that is another big problem of envy towards other living entities. One subtly or grossly criticizes or minimizes or their contribution, or criticize them, or think of them less. That's a sign of envy. All racism, speciesism, sexism, casteism, whatever it is, this is all based on envy of other jivas. Okay. So the first one is fault finding or deceitfulness. Second is envy. Third is pratisthasha or desire for fame. This is a sign of hriday daurbalya, weakness of heart. Fame is like acharyas describe it as stool, you know. But one wants to be very famous for one's activities. I have done this. One wants to take credit. If that credit doesn't come, if fame doesn't come, then he becomes morose. He becomes slackened in his devotional service. So these are this is pratishtha. Pratishtha. I want to be superior or better than others. I want to be more famous. That I have done so much. So this is all. This is pratisthasha as a sign of hridaya daurbalya. So we talked about fault finding. Talked about enviousness. We talked about pratisthasha. And there is one more, which is escaping my mind right now. So, like that, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that Swa Tattva Vibhrama, not understanding that I'm not this mind, Paratattva Vibhrama, Sadhya Sadhana Vibhrama, Virodhi Vishaya Vibhrama are the four kinds of Vibhramas or illusion about reality. Second one is Asattrishna, desire for material objects, heavenly planets, yogic siddhis, and impersonal liberation. Is called Asattrishna. The third one is Aparad, towards living entities, towards devotees, towards the holy name, and towards the form of the Lord. And then finally, Hridaya Daurbalyam, which is fault finding or duplicity, enviousness, um, pratisthasha, desire for fame, and desire for objects which are not related to Krishna. That's the fourth one, Hridaya Daurbalyam. Devotees may have a small attraction for coffee or this or food which is not offerable to Krishna, or they may have a small attraction for playing, lottery or whatever it is. They think that these are harmless activities, but this is actually anartha. This is Hridaya Daurbalya. These are activities which are not related to Krishna. They cannot be dovetailed in Krishna's service. So that is called Hridaya Daurbalya. If one has to make progress, one should constantly be on the guard and vigilant about these things, about one's tendencies and conditionings, and one should try to remove themselves. One should not indulge these things. You follow? One should not indulge in them. Don't indulge in these things. Stay away from these things. Fools rushing where angels fear to tread. Be an angel. A devotee is circumspect, he's thoughtful, he's reflective, he's always guided by wisdom, buddhi yoga. We have two aspects of ourselves. Of course, our senses has to be engaged in Krishna's service, but one has to also use one's discriminative intelligence, one's wisdom, one's buddhi about what is good for me and what is not good for me, what will lead to liberation and what will lead to entanglement. Sometimes apparently devotional activities will lead to entanglement. So one has to possess some degree of renunciation, vairagya vidya. So that is there. So I will stop here. I have talked a little bit about anarthas, talked about a little bit about shraddha. I talked about sadhu sangha. I talked about bhajana kriya, and I talked about anartha nivratti. When anarthas go away, in the state of anarthas, a jiva's mostly his preoccupation is to disentangle himself from Mahamaya. That's his preoccupation. When he's free from anarthas or partially free from anarthas, and he proceeds to nishtha and ruchi, then his main engagement is actually ever expanding bliss, compassion, and love for all living entities and for Krishna. That's his main occupation. He's in love. Then he's really in love. He's actually at the platform of Brahman, and he's really on the spiritual platform. But until then, it's an uphill battle. It's a struggle. Okay, so these are the thoughts which are coming to my mind. It's 5:45. I would like to dedicate next few minutes for any reflections, questions, or maybe if I said something correctly, somebody can correct me also.
Devotees, those who have questions, yourself and ask the question. Or anything you want to comment, you can please comment by unmuting yourself.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for the wonderful class. So I had a question like all these categories, can these categories overlap also like sad, sadhya, sadhana, vibrama, and thirst for heavenly damsels? They look for like goal is lost in both cases. So
You're absolutely right, Prabhu. They can be overlapped, but sometimes, an advanced practitioner can detect, in the heart of a devotee, which one is more prominent. But you're right. You're right. For example, aparad. Aparad is definitely an example of virodhi vishaya vibrama. Okay, not um, virodhi vishaya, topics which are unfavorable to Krishna bhakti. Yes, we know that another definition of bhakti is whatever is favorable and whatever we should accept, whatever is unfavorable we should reject. So that is there. Of course, it's an example of illusion. To commit offenses to other living entities. And so, yeah, you are absolutely right. They can be overlapped.
and thank you, Prabhu. And I had one more question. Like I think the you said in the primary way to get out of this anarthas is to do like focus on attentive chanting. Or is there like any other tool which we can use?
Yes, attentive chanting. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says Nam Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, and the association of devotees going out and chanting. That also brings mercy of the Lord. Being very, very careful and vigilant and hyper vigilant, in the association of devotees and not taking the process for granted. As time goes by, people take bhakti to be just another thing. But if we really pay full attention, Bhakti Tirtha Swami says we should behave as if this is the first day of our joining the Hare Krishna movement. Every day should be like I have joined the movement for the first time. One should really be in awe and reverence and of the wonder of Krishna consciousness and not making things lightly or cheaply.
Thank you, Prabhu.
One
Haribol?
can one can also tend to create a fresh challenge for oneself. Krishna consciousness is a dynamic force. It's a dynamic urge of the soul to create fresh challenges for oneself, to explore different opportunities for service, to expand one's preaching field. All of these will also help us progress in bhakti and help with anartha nivratti. Okay, somebody else was saying something.
Yes, I just have a simple question. Haribol Prabhu, that was a wonderful lecture. I qualify for all those anarthas, so I recognized every single one of them. But I was wondering, practically speaking, could you tell us what the first priority is in a devotee's everyday life? What his first priority should be, and that action or behavior or habit, how he should view it, etc. So what would be the first priority if a devotee was a simple person, or just simply beginning his devotional career, or having trouble, especially these days, without the association of devotees? Someone might be all alone or something like that for long periods of time, and you don't get that personal association, which is palpable in how it affects your spirit and your connection to Krishna, because you're around Krishna all day with the other devotees. But if you're all alone and you are feeling weak, what would be the first priority, practically speaking, that a devotee should concentrate on?
Practically speaking, the first priority should be in any challenge in life, know that the challenge is only as long as you don't sit down with your beads and complete your 16 rounds uninterruptedly. Or you can go for a walk and chant. Any problem in my life, no problem is big enough. It's only a matter of all my problems of life can be solved in 2 hours. Whatever problem I have, just start fresh. Let's set the reset button, pick up your beads, and make sure you are in an undistracted environment. And 2 hours later, all the problems of life will be solved. Ignore the mind. The mind will do its thing. I have a mnemonic which I use, which is called RAIN, RAIN. R is to recognize. Sometimes thoughts come in the mind which can be disturbing, which may take me away from chanting. But to recognize it, to accept it, not to fight it. I don't fight any thoughts. Okay, these things are there. Let me accept it. I have some challenges in life. I may have some difficulties in life. Yes, pandemic is a challenge. Lack of association is a challenge. Depression is a challenge. Let me accept it. Recognize it, accept it. Bring it to your conscious awareness, accept it wholeheartedly, whatever life is throwing at you, without judging yourself, without putting yourself down, without judging anything else. Just accept it wholeheartedly. Recognize it, accept it, investigate it. Investigate is, why? Why is it that I'm feeling this way? Maybe I need to cultivate more gratitude for what I have. Maybe I need to be more humble. Maybe I need to stop judging people. Maybe I need to not be affected by the dualities of this material world. What is it that I can do internally? Many times the change is required internally. No external change is required. An internal change is required in my consciousness, in my attitude, in my view of things. And is it really such a bad thing, in the scheme of 311 trillion and 40 billion years of Brahma's life? Whatever challenges I have, is it really so bad? So identify, so recognize, accept. I is for investigate, and N is the most important piece of it. N is to not identify with it. These are material mental ideas, material mental things, which I'm struggling with. So negation or not identifying with it, recognizing, accepting, investigating, and non-identifying with your thoughts is the way to control your mind. Anyway, chant nicely. Once you have done your rounds, ask yourself, can you give it a day or two in your life where you can press a real reset button and chant for longer periods of time? That should be the real priority. The real priority should be to chant one mantra at a time and to chant nicely. Once that is done, I ask myself two questions. Did I do anything to commit an offense towards a Vaishnava today? That includes my wife and my, dear friends and anybody, did I commit any offense towards a Vaishnava or towards a living entity today? That's the second question to ask. And the third question is, did I do something to positively help Lord Chaitanya's movement today? Did I do anything which actually contributed to the spreading of the holy name? Because offense is sometimes the best form of defense. If you're always in that mood of giving Krishna consciousness, then in giving you receive. So those are the top priorities. Top priorities is to chant the holy name and chant the holy name, to not commit offense to a living entity or a Vaishnava, and to somehow or another help Lord Chaitanya's movement.
Wonderful. Thank you, Prabhu. Wonderful.